He's wanting to be really aggressive in his pricing, but one thing to make a sale, it's another one to make money on the sale.
The customers always ask, well, how do we lock in the price? And the answer, is buy it right now.
You just have to do good business, right? Like if we don't have it, we don't have it. If the price has gone up, the price has gone up. We can't change circumstances. The only thing that we can change is the terms of the deal that we're going to offer.
I think we had it quoted within a day or two. And then he pretty much accepted it within probably 15 or 20 minutes of submitting it to him. And then the install was about 2 weeks later.
This is a better fit for me than everything else I've seen. They even showed me the quotes. They said, this is great. And then I never heard from him ever again.
I've heard it said that FU money is made in follow-up, right? FU stands for follow-up money. Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Jake. I'm so excited to have you all here with me today. I am coming back well rested after a few days off, and really happy to spend my first day back at the office with all of you. For those that may be new to the call, we have this coffee break call every Friday at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the call is to bring together security professionals from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world, to discuss best practices, challenges, and opportunities too. On today's call, what I'm hoping to discuss with all of you is how to prevent getting ghosted, how to convert more proposals into purchase orders. And this is a topic that I must admit I have not perfected myself. I think that there's always room for improvement on funneling up post-proposal. And I know that there's some really smart folks on the call that are doing a great job with that. So selfishly, I've brought you all here not to teach you the secret sauce, but to learn from you, because as I've mentioned on previous calls, the best things I've learned from other people. And so I'm really excited to learn some things from you today. So if there's anybody on the call that closes 100% of every quote, every proposal that they send out, would you raise your hand for me? Dang it. I was really hoping we were going to have somebody on here that closes 100%. If anybody does close a high percentage of their quotes, and I would consider a high percentage to be 50% or more, would you raise your hand for me? Nobody. Interesting. All right, cool. So let's talk conversion rates. Would anybody be willing to share what their conversion rate is on quotes and if they track it? Awesome. Okay, we've got John on here. John, tell us about your conversion rates.
So we're a bit of a mix, right? We've got a pretty large customer base. So we've got kind of 3 separate groups of sales. We've got our managers that are handling our customers, existing customers. So they're really more of farmer mentality. We've got some hunters that are out there gathering new projects and proposals. And then we've got inside sales that anticipate smaller requirements for existing customers and pushes opportunities that seem like they're turning into something larger. On our existing customer base, the close ratio is probably 65-66%. Which is expected. They know who we are. They know our services. They're familiar with our cost structure, and they need to upgrade and grow, whatever. When it comes to new product, new customers, new proposals, right? Scratch up. They've never done business with us. We're probably, I'd have to look real quick. I haven't looked today, but we're generally in kind of the mid 40% range. So 44 through about 47% is where we fall in that regard.
Can you segment that at all? So and we're talking about different types of systems or projects. Is there any kind of segmentation that you look at when you're tracking the conversion rates?
Yeah. I mean, we do use industry verticals. And so we do track that internally, but it's not something we spend a lot of time on. We spend more time on kind of identifying high conversion rate verticals when we're doing our budgeting process for the next fiscal year, right? And whether or not we want to kind of develop a better marketing spend or make a different push into that area.
What about tracking conversion rates by sales rep? Are you guys, do you track that? And then how often are you kind of, as you're working or your sales leaders are working with those sales reps, how often are they discussing conversion rate with them?
Well, I'm not sitting, so I don't oversee sales directly. But as I know, we do weekly one-on-ones with most of our sales reps where they kind of have a 15, 20-minute stand-up where they review pipeline, project discussion, any support needs or helps. I believe their close rate is discussed there, but I haven't sat in one, so I couldn't tell you specifically.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, do we have any sales leaders on the call, whether you are a sales manager, a VP of sales, or an owner that is filling the role or serving in the role as sales leader for your company? Do we have any sales leaders on the call? All right, we're going to jump to you, Kirk. So, Kirk, are you willing to share what your conversion rate is?
Yeah, overall, it's around 35%. A lot of it depends on the type of lead that we're dealing with. Of course, existing clients and referrals are probably more around, 60%. Find a lot in commercial, most people are getting, 3 quotes is pretty standard. Some more, some less, but if someone's getting, 3 quotes, hopefully we're a little bit better than 33%. Yeah, that's kind of the numbers we're looking at. Right now, we're actually, we just switched into a new CRM. So we're actually working right now on digging into those numbers and verifying them. And we're in the process of really verifying what our numbers are. So we have a CRM system that we're using that has, a flow, right? And so within those, we're just starting to get into our forecasting based upon the amount of quotes that we have and our closing percentage. So, we can better forecast that pipeline.
Yeah, I think that that forecasting consideration is where sales leadership and ops leadership really comes together, right? Because it's not just about how many deals you win; it's how many deals you can actually install, right? If dramatically you went from a, let's say, 40% conversion rate up to a 80% conversion rate, that might make it very difficult to actually get those installed in a timely manner. And so, Kirk, as you're quoting, do you consider as you're setting pricing what your current install pipeline is to set prices, right? Whether, if you're booked out for weeks, maybe you quote it a little bit higher, or if you see a gap coming up in your install schedule, you might quote it lower. Are you doing anything like that based on the forecasting that you have?
We generally don't go higher because we're typically shooting for a 100% markup is our goal, where we're kind of happy at 40%. So somewhere in that 40 to 100% area, right? Thankfully we've been pretty busy the last 6 months to a year and previously, but with the forecasting, if we see we're coming up short, then I think we would provide some additional discounts to shore that up to fill the pipeline is the purpose there. I've got a couple reps right now. One is a newer guy, and he's really starting to gain a lot of traction. And then I have another guy that's more experienced, and he's struggling a little bit. And he's wanting to be really aggressive in his pricing. But one thing to make a sale, it's another one to make money on the sale. And why go do it if we're not going to make money? We just want to stay home, just stay home, right? I know there is an RMR component to things, but that definitely is a factor, but it's not everything.
As you mentioned that, it's one thing to sell it, it's another thing to make money. And when we're looking at conversion rates, sometimes, I hear something like, more than 33%, and you feel like that's a good number. There might be some folks on the call or some salespeople on the call that are thinking, gosh, 1 out of 3, that means I'm putting together 3 quotes for every one that I get. But that also means that you're not winning every job. And for those of you that are on the call that might be winning a high percentage of jobs, north of 50%, north of 75%, it's worth considering that maybe closing ratio is high, but your pricing might be too low, right? You might be able to do much better with a lower conversion rate, but higher pricing. Do we have anybody that's on the call that has closed a project within the past 90 days that took more than 6 months to close? Is there anybody on the call that has had projects with a sales cycle that was longer than 6 months to go from quote to close? All right, I'm gonna jump to Eric, and I'm gonna jump around a little bit here. Eric, talk to me about the type of project that might have that long sales cycle. And this is, I want to prep before we get into this discussion. I want to say this. I think that as business leaders and as sales leaders, those long sales cycle pipeline opportunities are one of the most important. Those are some of the most important projects to track and make sure that you have your systems for follow up dialed in, because those can be really substantial figures. A lot of times that longer sales cycle or it's larger projects. So Eric, talk to us about what kind of project you would work on that would have more than a 6-month sales cycle.
Yeah, you nailed it, Jake. I'm really that's about definitely the majority of our install revenue is the longer sales cycle type projects. These span anywhere from new construction of businesses whereby we're engaged in the design and the specification of the project itself to schools, new schools being built, of course, to any larger project whereby there's many layers of approval. So we'll coach the customer from the process of, initial design assessment to quotation to then, they go through a process. Oh, we have to get an RFP. Let's go through that process and bid it out. And definitely 6 months is not rare for what we do.
For salespeople, for managing salespeople that aren't getting paid a month in, 2 months in, 3 months in, they don't get paid until the project is won and completed, right? Talk to me about how you, number one, before we get into their follow up, talk to me about how you find the right folks that are willing to wait out that pipeline opportunity. How do you handle that? How do you hire those folks? How do you keep the momentum up as they go through all those steps to get the project won?
Boy, it's like I coached you before this. No, frankly, that's our biggest gap right now, Jake. We've actually had not only a hard time hiring but retaining folks. About 2 years ago, we had to shift from compensation at the sale, at the purchase order receipt, to compensation at the completion because not only because obviously we're not getting paid, but
Sure.
the change orders and the job margins change so much. You might estimate a 35% margin at day one, yet when you've blew the hours by 100% and all the parts were wrong at the get-go and we ended up making 15%, the salesman's got to feel some of that pain and they've been upset about it. So that was one component that caused us to lose one of our top salespeople. And frankly, it was the right decision in the end for him to be gone anyway. But it's definitely something that we've recontemplated our sales compensation, and for those kind of projects, we've shifted more toward a bonus, quarterly bonus for hitting targets versus a commission on job to job.
Interesting. So like a higher base salary,
Yeah.
taking into account all the blocking and tackling involved in getting to, from bid to PO to getting paid, and also recognizing, hey, look, like there needs to be some incentive here to follow that project through all the change orders, making sure that, if there are tariffs that impact product pricing. I don't envy any of our partners who have been in a position within the past 30, 60 days or so where they got final approval on a job that they quoted 6 months ago. And now they have to have the very hard conversation with, their customer that, hey, like, I'm sorry, but things have changed. We actually need to rework this. Based on your nodding, it sounds like you might have dealt with that. Could you speak to that a little bit?
We actually have 2 in the hopper right now that we've been refusing to sign contracts for. One was 300,000, and we've got about a 10% increase that we have to pass on, and I'm not eating. And so, we're actually waiting on the client. It was through a GC who went back to the client, the owner of the project. We've just got verbal actually on both of those that they're going to be eating the cost increases, and we're gonna get them. But I hedged a little bit. I wasn't sure if I wanted to lose the contract over it, but on these, I decided, you know what, screw it, go to somebody else and see if they're going to give you the same deal. You already picked me the first go around. You're going to pick me again.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm glad to hear they've at least verbally approved that. It goes back to what Kirk was saying about, hey, it's one thing to win a project, it's another thing to make money on it. And we can't just always be in the business of chasing dollars, right? We actually have to make some money. If you didn't want to make any money, you could be in the distribution business, you know? We got John Doles on. John, talk to us about those long sales cycle types of projects that you have.
Yeah, Jake, most of those come from property management companies that are working on behalf of, say, an HOA, um, or another would be houses of worship, that kind of thing, where there are numerous decision makers working with a third party to give approval, and I expect those things to take a long time. Also, I'm selective about the ones that I'm actually going to entertain offering a proposal. And when I do, the proposal has limitations on it, good for 60 days. And I don't want to go any further than that. That might, in fact, be too long because of the way things are.
A month ago, 60 days could really get you in trouble.
Yeah, it could. So, as an owner operator, I don't have the staff issues where I'm having to kind of clean up after a sales rep who like maybe grossly underestimated things and have to come clean up. I've seen that in corporate, in my time in the corporate security alarm world. But I'd say the things I close are probably well above 50%, simply because I'm selective about the things that I'm going to do. The sources tend to be more warm referral, or I've been very successful finding jobs on Google, and the margins they're going to be exactly what I need. I don't give away a lot, just simply because I think I'm highly competitive in what I'm quoting right now, and it is going to guide me as to the profit I need on the job.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And you bring up a good point too, as a small business owner in a sales position, right? You have control over your quoting, you have control over what projects you're taking on. You know, there's nothing wrong with low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? Like it's good, and it can be some of the best, right? Because you're not having to stretch for it. I think as you hire more salespeople and folks are stretching and really stretching, and some of that fruit that's really high up, right? They're looking for leads everywhere. And that's actually a good thing, right? It's good that those salespeople are out there looking for opportunities, that they're quoting, that they're putting in the work. You know, the number of jobs that you sell is going to be a direct correlation to the number of jobs that you quote, right? No matter what your conversion rate is, quoting more jobs, the math usually maths that you'll sell more jobs if you quote more jobs. John, talk to us about long sales cycle projects. If you might be able to talk specifically large commercial projects, how do you guys track that, and how do you keep your sales reps motivated, I guess, throughout that process?
Commission. That's how you keep sales guys motivated. You pay them good commission. I mean, I think the long lead time projects, right, is anything public, right? Anything public, anything that has to go in front of a committee, anytime you're not speaking to the decision maker, that just extends the lead time, whether it's a residential sale and you're talking to one side of the family and they object with the other side that they need to talk to them. For us on the larger scale stuff, so this is going to be, 300K and up. The cycle can be extremely long, especially on the fire alarm side. And we have language written into all our bid specs that just says if there's any pricing increases, it will, and you pick us, that will be reflected in the contract. It's a non-starter for us. We're willing to work with our manufacturers, get, project registration discounts, but at some point, if the cost goes up before they make the decision and sign the contract, we are absolutely going to pass that cost along. We were probably less lenient on that pre-COVID, pre kind of global supply chain epidemic. And now we're just hard fast on it because it's just completely unpredictable long term.
You know, I think that's an interesting point. We had no idea the limit. What's the way to say this? We had no idea how long people would be willing to wait for stuff pre-COVID supply chain disruption issues. I think for a lot of businesses and business leaders, it made them realize, like, hey, wait a second. If we can have a global supply chain issue, major disruptions, And we can navigate through that by being really diligent, by saying, "Hey, look, this is what it is. Like, we can't change it." And doing business in that way, I think it actually, as hard as it was, I think it made most folks realize you just have to do good business, right? Like, if we don't have it, we don't have it. If the price has gone up, the price has gone up. We can't change circumstances. The only thing that we can change is the terms of the deal that we're going to, to offer. So, really interesting point on that.
Jake, if I could just add, we tell our, it's, you often have to have that conversation with a customer, especially in a product line that maybe is going to have some instability. And, the customers always ask, well, how do we lock in the price? And the answer, is buy it right now. Buy it today. Cut me a PO today, and I can absolutely guarantee you pricing. And I think in that conversation, it really is transparent to the customer what we're trying to talk about. And two, it cuts a little levity into it, but it also makes them really clear. The longer they wait, the longer the cycle time takes, the more exposure they're going to have on their end to increase costs. It just is what it is.
Has anybody on the call ever been ghosted by a prospect? And before I go to this, I do want to mention real quick too, project registrations are a very valuable tool to lock in your pricing with manufacturers, and you can use those project registration expirations as deadlines for your customers to order. So I would encourage you, if you're not registering large projects, please make sure that you register. My team is very, very proactive about registering projects with manufacturers that offer it. So if you do have large projects, let us know. We can certainly register those. Dave Schwartz, talk to us about getting ghosted by prospects.
Yeah, I think anybody that says this never happened is lying. I mean, anyone that's ever worked in sales has had someone who wasn't comfortable saying no. And for ABC customer, it's a lot easier to just never answer the phone again. Customer changes their mind for whatever reason.
Dave, to your point real quick about there's a lot of times people don't want to say no. I think the other answer other than no is not right now. This isn't the priority for me that it is for you. I face this a lot, actually. Like, I have salespeople that want to sell me something that I may or may not be interested in. Sometimes I'm interested in it, but it's so far down on my priority list that they're just not going to get an approval or an order, or they're just not going to get the sale right away. And so, Dave, let's say that you're selling something to me, and I don't have you. I would always have you at the highest of priorities, right? But Dave, you're trying to sell me an access control system or a video surveillance system, and you haven't heard back from me. Number one, what's going through your head? And number two, how do you follow up with me?
Well, like, I had one a few weeks ago who we had a meeting, it went great. They said you're one of 3 companies I'm evaluating. This is a better fit for me than everything else I've seen. They even showed me the quotes. They said this is great. And then I never heard from them ever again. They didn't take my calls, didn't respond to my emails. And I think you have to be able to just move on. Like, you can't get hung up on these, because to your point, maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe they decided to go somewhere else. But either way, I can't make my whole life about this one customer, or I'm never going to get anywhere. And I think that's kind of it's a rookie salesperson move to get really emotionally invested. But yeah, I mean, you have to be comfortable moving on at a certain point.
Yeah, no, 100%. I will say this. I tell my sales folks to follow up with customers and prospects until they buy from us or they tell us not to call them again. Because the worst case scenario is they tell us not to buy, or they tell us not to call again. But the best case scenario is they do actually buy something. But to your point, you do have to recognize that you can't focus all your effort and all your time on following up with people that have effectively ghosted you. I just want to caveat to that. I've heard it said that FU money is made in follow up, right? FU stands for follow up money. I'd be curious if there's somebody on the call that has a really effective way to follow up. with customers, whether that's through text message, email, phone call, carrier pigeon. If you can throw it into the chat, or raise your hand, I'd love to speak to you about that. Dave, thanks so much for sharing that. I'm going to jump to Kirk. Kirk, you get ghosted by a prospect. How are you following up with them? What's going through your head, and how are you following up with them?
A couple things. So I kind of like the baseball analogies, right? One is it takes two to play.
You may be over my head here because I'm like sports ball illiterate, but I'm going to try. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I'm sure you played pitch and catch at least once in your life where you're playing pitch and catch, right? And I'll play pitch and catch with a customer as long as they're sincere. But if they're going to hold the ball, it's a waste of time to try to go there and knock the ball out of their hand, to get it back and expect them to play, right? So as long as you're playing pitch and catch and there's flow, then I'm all in, right? The other analogy, I'm kind of like 3 strikes and you're out. Maybe I'm a little thing, but if I do 3 follow-ups and I don't hear anything back, unless there's something exceptional, like I'm not going to take my personal time at that point, right? I'm kind of 3 strikes and you're out. But the other one is it's really important to have a good quoting system, right? That automates a lot of the follow-up too through email and or texting. And so we do that, and we also put a survey in there. And a lot of times we'll get feedback on the survey. I won't say a lot of times, but some of the time we'll get a feedback on the survey, and that just kind of tells us, hey, I don't waste your time. So I think Sandler sales training. I heard a Sandler rep tell me once that and this is kind of true. But when you first meet a buyer, they're all gushy and nice, and they love you. And then you send a quote, and they're interested in getting that quote, and then you start probing, and then buyers have a tendency to lie, and then after that, then they have a tendency to hide, right? Then they hide, and then when they resurface and when they wanna buy, then everything is back to lovey gushy. So that's a cycle that I see a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that it's funny because there's so many times, for example, like I'll meet somebody at a trade show or something, and they're like, "Oh man, Jake," I'm like, I love you, I love your coffee break calls, I love your Facebook group. We're gonna get so blessed and branded. I'm so excited. And then they hide. I'm like, where'd you go? What happened? I thought we had a thing. We took a selfie together. Where you at? So I totally relate to that. I will tell you, one of the things that I've found with when customers or prospects are hiding, one of the questions I like to ask is I like to send them an email that says something like, "Hey, did I drop the ball?" And that's all the email. That'll be like all it says. "Hey, did I drop the ball?" Or, "Hey, did we screw something up?" And I have found that oftentimes that gets a much better response than like, "Hey, I'm just checking in to see if you're still interested," or, "Hey, I'm just following up, we had a good conversation, whatever. Hey, did we screw up?" Or, "Is this no longer a priority for you?" If there's anybody on the call that has a follow-up question or something that they found to be a very effective way to re-engage folks in conversation when it seems like they've dropped off, would you raise your hand for me? Scott, talk to me about your follow-up question that works well for you to re-engage people in conversation, hopefully leading to a sale.
I used to do the same thing. Sounds like you're talking about with the hey, just checking in, seeing if you had any questions. And those were too light. And then one day I don't know if it was like a bit of an anger or frustration. So I created one that was a little bit more pointed and really just said, yeah, close the door, just closing the loop. If anything changes on your end, we'd be happy to re-engage. And then over time I took that and I thought, you know what? Let's see what Chat GPT says about being formal and using something a little professional, and I got one that's casual and I got one that's more professional for a larger client base. When I started using those, I would at least get replies, either letting me know that, yeah, I'm right, they didn't have the timing wasn't right, or that they went in another direction. But it really helped just kind of close that loop. But on the flip side of it, suddenly I was getting about a 10% close rate.
What you thought were lost opportunities,
Yep,
right?
on that.
That's found money. That's FU money.
Yeah, that was the kind of a aha thing where I thought, okay, I will create, and I don't want to say it's rude, but it really just sort of is an honest question. I wrote down your point too. I might incorporate the, hey, did I drop the ball into it? Because what I'm really looking to do is just get them to engage again, and then I get that conversation going. One that I closed yesterday, which was kind of one of those FU ones. I just reached out to him and I said, I apologize. I must have not been very clear in the, I was mad at him. He had ghosted me. Mad, not in the point of emotionally mad, losing sleep, but just like, when you go out, like you say, and you have those warm and fuzzies and they love you but then they ghost you. So I just decided, well, I'll send him I apologize. I must have not been very clear in my proposal, and then I laid it all out with, points, 'cause it was a money-driven thing that I was pretty sure he wasn't, replying back to. And then this morning, I got my work open my email, and it said, "Thanks for the clarification. Please proceed." So again, it was really just sorta being a little more, I don't wanna say pointed, but not beating around the bush anymore, and it really sorta works.
I like your, hey, I'm sorry. I must not have been clear. Or, maybe honestly just seems like a variation of, hey, I'm sorry. Did I screw up? It's an invitation for them to put the blame on you, right? Like they're just busy. They've had other things in their mind. They've had other priorities, and now you're giving them an out rather than to say, "Hey, it seems like this isn't important to you, or you've forgotten about it, or hey, I put all this work into it and now I don't hear from you. What the heck? Like why are you wasting my time?" Right? That might be how we want to respond, right? I've never wanted to respond that, maybe a couple of times, but I think that instead kind of coming to the conversation with humility and with a gracious kind of message, offering them an out, offering them an opportunity to say, hey, yeah, let's move forward. I think that, like you said, sometimes it's not a super high percentage, but gosh, if 10% of your seemingly lost opportunities to convert to deals, that's a pretty sweet deal. That's substantial. Is there anybody on the call that has quoted a project over $5,000 within the past 30 days? Anybody quote a project more than $5,000? Stevie G on the call quoted a project over $5,000. What type of project was it? How long did it take to close it?
It was access control. It was upgrading the system to COS readers and Signal cards. Took us about a week, 5 days. Everything was done remotely. Then asked the client to go verify if it was switch plate or MOLLE mount for us. I had one guy, we had different access controls. One guy approved it like within like 30 minutes of him getting it because of all the talk we did explaining what we were doing. So he was just waiting for some numbers. A couple of other people, 3 days. I don't think they got any other quotes. I think it was like, we've got to do this. Let me just cross T's with Bob. And no, people aren't in the office anymore, and that seems to be a little bit of the problem. So it's not like before you could run down the hall and they go into your office and say, hey, boss, what do we want to do? Is this, you know, they email it to the person doesn't get back to them, then they go and they leave for half a day. That seems to be where it is. It's not like they're searching. I think people are too stressed, and if you give them a reasonable price, like one of the other people were saying, I think they're like, I don't have the energy to go deal with this and get three different quotes and deal with people we've never spoken with. I got a good feeling with this person, and I think this is where we need to be.
Yeah, it's one way to pick the over $5,000 ticket value. It's enough that somebody probably doesn't give you a verbal go ahead right there on the phone. They do have to think about it, but it's not so big of a project that it might be worth them, totally shopping it like they would with a $100,000 project that you could guarantee is going out to bid. Is there any follow up between are you able to track when they open your proposal? Or and are they able to approve it, like sign off on it electronically, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Once we send it, the second, and if we happen to send it to multiple people within the organization, who reads it, when they read it, how long they've read it, did they download the proposal, or are they just looking it on the screen? If they forwarded the proposal, and yes, within it, they have the ability to click on it and say, we've approved it. There's also a feature in there which, as some people were talking about, you get ghosted. W- We even have in our proposal the ability to decline it.
Yeah.
And you could just say for a variety of reasons,
Good point.
price, not interested. So we even try to give people a way out. I think maybe in all the quotes we ever sent out, if I've had 2 people do that, it would be a lot. So they're not ghosting and just clicking on, you know what, we're not interested at this time.
Yeah, I actually like that, the ability to just say no easily, right? And not have to say it over the phone or in person or even respond in the email, just decline and for what reason. I want to jump to Mauricio. Dave, keep your hand up for me. But Mauricio, just because I haven't talked to you in a bit, tell us about the project that you quoted for $5,000 or more.
We were working with a law firm, right? And the law firm has a client that has a penthouse on Miami Beach, and he's in a dispute with the association regarding water intrusion into the penthouse. And so they called us out to say, hey, we need to install some cameras, probably monitor what's going on. We don't want anybody in there unauthorized because the association is supposed to call them. But apparently the association stuck a Ring camera on the same level looking at his his penthouse that has a second floor where the roof where the issue is, where the water is going in. So we built out a quote for cameras, and we added monitoring, right? Because there's entry points in the system, and we put it together for them. They say, hey, we need this right away because we want to start this process because we're in the middle of a court dispute. And we got it to them basically within 48 hours. That was 2 weeks ago. And I'm still chasing them. Hey,
Are
what do
you
you need?
chasing them? Are you physically following him around? Uh,
Yeah.
or what are you doing? How are you following up with him?
Call, text, email, and trying to, I know that you have the client, we're trying to help you out, keep it, and I try to remind everybody, this doesn't happen, you push a button, say quote approved, and we're there the next day. We have a schedule, we have an installation schedule. We've been telling them, we need to keep a schedule and want to get you on the schedule, but the first step is to get me the approval from the client and get a deposit on it. That's where we are, and yeah, that's just one example, but yes, sometimes you react quickly. They called us. They know the owner, Eric. They know Eric very well. Eric's like, hey, I need you to go over there, and had a meeting on site with the representative of the owner, the law firm, and a contractor that's going to be doing some work on that penthouse.
Yeah. So couple of things here, just that I want to call out. Mauricio talks about wanting to make sure that they understand that their install is not going to happen immediately when they give them the green light on the quote. It's super important to establish a timeline expectation with your customer. Hey, when are you going to need this by? And then explaining to them, well, cool, right? Like, John mentioned when people ask, hey, how can I guarantee this is the price? He can say, well, you can buy it right now, right? Like if you want that price, you could buy it right now. If you understand that somebody's timeline is, hey, we're going to need this installed by next Tuesday. Do you think that's possible? Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to check with our install manager to see if we could slip it in. We're booked out 2-3 weeks, but let me check. By the way, stepping outside to call your manager, whether you know or not that it can be on the schedule, is a worthwhile thing to do, right? Call the office, ask them what kind of coffee and donuts they're going to have there when you get back, and then come in and let them know, hey, look, I've got approval to get this done next Tuesday, but we are going to need to get this booked right now. So if you do want to get it done on Tuesday, let's get this signed, let's get a deposit, and we'll get this on the schedule. So Mauricio also talks about meeting with multiple people there. You may be getting ghosted because you don't know who the decision make. I'm not saying you, Mauricio, I'm sure you did your due diligence on this, but you may be getting ghosted because you weren't actually talking to the ultimate decision maker. right? This could be somebody that's collecting information to provide to the decision maker. So it is really important to understand who ultimately is going to make the decision. You can ask people, "Hey, like, are you the final decision maker on this? Is there anybody else, that we need to include in communication on this so we can so that they can understand, relevant notes and review the proposal." That can help you prevent getting ghosted. We've got Patrick on the call. Patrick, talk to us about the last project you quoted over $5,000.
So I think the last one we did was a little small business, a little chain that we've had as a customer before. They are moving their office, so it was a quick walk in, do a in-person walkthrough during construction, get stuff figured out for camera replacements, that kind of stuff. It was a camera security, a little bit of an access control system. I think we had it quoted within a day or two. And then he pretty much accepted it within probably 15 or 20 minutes of submitting it to him. And then the install was about 2 weeks later. So
I think that the time to quote it, I think it's actually a metric that if you're not tracking, it's a worthwhile thing to track, right? From when the opportunity comes in to when you have a quote out to the customer, that clock should start, right? Because there are some, it's funny. I need an HVAC system, a new system for the house. And man, if the companies that came out first and had a quote to me first weren't the most expensive. I mean, they were outrageous. My house was hot. It was hot in the house. Here I am with a real problem, needing a real solution. And they were able to provide me a quote fast, right? Like right there on the spot. And had I been a little bit more impulsive, or just busy and frustrated, maybe I would have just pulled the trigger on that. And so, Patrick, I think that getting quotes out within a day is really awesome. I think that for smaller projects, being able to quote right on the spot will increase your conversion rate, right? And so we're not talking about this on today's call, but I would like to say that having standardized pricing, having a really simple calculators and packages that you can provide your sales reps with enables them to quote projects, if not right there on the spot, shortly thereafter, so that your customers can quickly pull the trigger. You may be ghosted sometimes because it takes you 3, 4 days to get a quote out, and somebody else came out, gave them a quote, gave them a price, and got the job on the schedule before you could even get a quote out to them. I would not underestimate the power of speed, particularly in sales, particularly in something that's not super exciting like a security surveillance or access control system. Nobody's super pumped about that. And whether we think about specs all day or not, most people don't think about all of the specs and features of their security access control and surveillance system. They probably had a need, probably had a situation. They want somebody that they trust and feel confident to come out and install it. All right. So Patrick, how do you quote these projects? Is it a and don't mention the software name, but is it a software package that you use? How do you get the quotes out to them?
it is the software that we use, so we can track all the, if they viewed it or not, if they've opened the email, everything or text. Um, and so we do everything digitally like that. I typically don't do paper stuff. We'll follow up with a phone call, shortly thereafter once we've seen that that's been opened, so that we can say, hey, we saw you got any questions, just that extra little touch, answer any of those immediate questions they have. Because the longer they sit on them, they're, it's like you said, it's that they have a need right now, and so we want to try to solve that need as quick as we can. And so that's where I found our most success is getting in there, getting those questions answered, and then usually within a short time after that, we can get either a yes, no, or we have a, something we've got to jump through, a fix or whatever.
Guys, before we finish up the call, is there anybody on the call whose close ratio is frustrating them? Is there anybody on the call who seems to have a lower conversion rate than they'd like? Everybody on the call has a conversion rate that they're happy with. That's good news. That's good news. Well, that means we can finish up early here today. guys, whether your conversion rate is or isn't what you'd like it to be, I think the key takeaways here from the call are that number one, your prospects, I should say, they're busy. You may not be the highest priority on their list, and so follow up is important, right? We've talked with some folks here who've done email proposals that allow them to track when it's open, whether it's forwarded, how long it's viewed. We've talked about calls and text messages and emails. We have talked about speed to get quotes out. And so if there's any takeaway from the call today, I would say be fast, follow up, and use tools to get your conversion rate. Number one, to track your conversion rate. And number two, to get your conversion rate where you want it to be. I also, we didn't have one of the folks on the call today that I would have liked recently changed one of his salespeople's position based on conversion rate. He was this dealer partner of ours had a sales rep that was really, really good at converting large projects, but his conversion rate with residential and SMB was actually lower than the other reps. He just got too into engineering the systems rather than providing kind of simple, repeatable solutions that were easy to quote, easy to install. And he changed his role. He said, look, we're not going to have you quote those systems anymore. We're going to have this person quote those systems who has a higher conversion rate. But all of those systems that you're really good at quoting, you're going to do that now. And since making that change, this person is now directing all of their effort into the types of sales that generate the most revenue and profit for the company. And so I just want to encourage you, if you have salespeople, track their conversion rates, track to see how well they do in different types of verticals, different types of projects, different product categories, and make sure you have the right person in the right seat on the bus, because when you do that, you can ensure that that you're as effective as possible. Guys, I want to thank you for being on a coffee break with Jake. We have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. We invite you to be here, whether you join in the conversation or ask questions or share expertise and insights or not. You're always welcome on the call. Whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on the call. If you do business with us, I want to thank you for the opportunity to support your business as your distributor. I want to thank you for the opportunity to print your logo on your products. If you don't do business with us today, I invite you to reach out. If I've screwed up in any way, if I've dropped the ball, if for some reason you were interested in doing business with us and it's me, not you, please let me know. I would love the opportunity to re-engage in conversation. If you have any issues, challenges, or opportunities that you'd like to discuss on an upcoming call, send me an email. Let me know. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.